So we're continuing Pirkei Avot Perek Daled, Mishnah Yud Bet. Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua Omer Yih Avot Talmidcha Chaviv Alecha Keshelach. In human relationships, it's quite natural for those who are older to look at those who are younger than them as less experienced, perhaps less knowledgeable. Age, says something. Age says that I've been around longer than you, and I know better. And many times it's true. As parents, we tend to tell the children, you'll see when you grow up, you'll understand what I mean. But the child thinks he knows better. Not always so. Parents do have experience. Older people do know somewhat, a little bit more about life, maybe. But it's not always so. And even if it were to be the case that the one is more knowledgeable and is more experienced, it doesn't mean that because of that he should look down at those who are younger, those who are less knowledgeable than he is. Here Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua is telling us that in order to preserve the dignity of another human being, it is important that we be very careful on how we relate to him, regardless of his age, regardless of how much he knows or he does not know. One's dignity is very important. Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua is actually known to have been very careful in this area, so he's practicing what he preaches. And I think the rabbis tell us he actually lived a very long time. He had a long life, and he attributes the length of his life to having been very careful with the respect of others. And the trick here is to be respectful to those who are younger. Because those who are older, those who are more knowledgeable, then naturally one looks up to them, perhaps admires them. But for those who are younger, why be careful? Why be so careful with their kavod, with their dignity? He says, "Hi kavod keshelcha," like your own. It should be as important as your kavod is. Why should it be so? I mean, obviously every human being is special. He's not only telling us the significance of preserving a human being's dignity is something of supreme importance. He's telling us that even if this is a young child, you're a student, make sure that you're careful in this area. One idea that the commentaries explain has to do with self-esteem. It's not just dignity, kavod, respect. Because you can claim, listen, if he's not that old, if he's not that knowledgeable, why should I give him kavod? Isn't kavod supposed to go to the elders, right? The Torah tells us in talking about kavod, make sure you get up, make sure you give the proper kavod to those who are elderly, above 70. You still have a way to go, don't worry. Yeah. You're young. Elderly, really elderly, right? So here, it's not just kavod. It's something else, and that is self-esteem. You want the child not to be broken. You want the child to continuously be encouraged, motivated to continue to learn. We're talking about talmidcha, your student. You want to be effective. And talmidcha, by the way, could be your child too. He's your student. I mean, you're teaching him, you're training him, you're raising him. So you want to be effective, you want to communicate properly. Part of effective communication involves kavod. The reason for that has to do with self-esteem, because even though some people are self-confident, they can easily break. Self-confident by nature, that's very nice. Some people have it, they're born with it, they're more self-confident. But everyone has a certain degree of self-esteem that can easily be shattered depending on how sensitive they are. And the younger a child is, the more fragile, the more vulnerable, I should say. And being a student, the teacher may say, come on, you don't know anything. He may react, he may express himself in a very demeaning, belittling way. So Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua therefore is talking to those situations, to those kinds of circumstances where there is a headmaster, a teacher, somebody who is older or more knowledgeable than those who he is teaching. Be careful. You don't want to break him, you don't want him to lose his motivation. You definitely don't want to embarrass him, because that's already a sin too. But it's not just a sin. Be careful. He's a human being just like you are. Treat him as an equal. And even though that's what he's saying, treat him as an equal, it doesn't mean that that child should not give him kavod. He's just saying the same way that you want him to give you kavod, which he should, you're his teacher, relate to him in a similar way. In other words, that be as sensitive to his kavod as he should be to your kavod. Because there's great importance in giving kavod even to those who are younger, for a variety of reasons. One of them being, of course, is self-esteem. But there's another point. The rabbis tell us that sometimes even an older individual can learn something from those who are younger than him. And in the class, in the classroom, in that kind of an environment where things are repeated and many times the same subject matter is reviewed and children ask questions, you'll be amazed at some of the questions the kids will ask and some of the answers that they will give, they will suggest for questions that you had a hard time understanding. My father has many, many such stories. He used to he taught for many, many years, at least 50 years. And he has many stories of kids giving incredible answers that the commentaries mention. The commentaries, the Or HaChaim, the Ramban, the Ibn Ezra. A child on his own, thinking of, why do you think this happened? Why did Yaakov do this? Right? So children can have creative ideas or creative answers, and we can learn from them. So don't look down at any individual, and definitely not your student, especially if you want to be effective, you want to succeed in communicating with him, in educating him. Treat him as an equal. What about your friend? Very interesting. If you'll notice, he speaks about 3 types of relationships: teacher, student, friends, and rabbi. And each one is one notch higher in the kavod. So when it comes to your friend, make sure that that kavod that you have for him, for your friend, is like the reverence. Reverence. Morah is not fear, even though it's from the same root. We're not supposed to be afraid of someone, in other words, that we respect. We have to have reverence. Reverence or awe is a combination of respect and a little bit of, I guess, I don't want to say distance, but of awe, of admiration, not fear. So for some reason he says that when it comes to the kavod of your friend that you get along with, that you befriend him, that you relate to him, that you're close to him, make sure that it's kemorah rabach. That kavod is like the reverence you have for your master, for your teacher. So far we see that this is one notch higher than the student. All he says by the student is make sure your kavod to him is like the kavod for yourself. In other words, the same way you want to be treated and respected, the same way treat him. Here it comes to a higher level. He raises the notch, and the kavod for your friend should be like kemorah rabach, like the fear, or not the fear, the reverence that you have for your master. Why? Anybody over here knows good English, perhaps is familiar with a saying that says, familiarity breeds contempt. Have you heard of this? You have to have been here for a while or know the language quite well or read a lot. Familiarity breeds contempt. Does everybody understand? It's a little bit difficult, or should I explain? It basically means people who know each other very, very well, as the lashon of the Chazal will be libo gasbo. He's so used to him that he takes the comfort of joking with him and doing things that perhaps are not so respectful. Contempt. It's like, big deal, right? The familiarity between the two breeds, it produces that kind of a relationship where people don't mind sometimes insulting each other even. Now, this is a very significant point, because you would say familiarity. Well, people who are comfortable with each other, they're nice to each other, they're respectful of each other, they know each other's faults, so maybe they're more accepting. No. There's also a certain possibility that the familiarity can lead to a certain zilzul, a certain degree of lack of respect. And some people are more sensitive than others about how they're treated. They may not tell you. Now, even though he says, kvod chavercha, I'd like to apply this to husband and wife too. Because that is a form of friendship too. It's supposed to be. It's a relationship on a similar level, even though it's it's more intimate, even though, of course, there's children hopefully involved, even though this is hopefully long-term. And obviously, it's different than just a friendship. But the same rule should apply, that the kavod of the other should be of supreme importance. Kavod Rabbi, right? This is your master. Right? This is someone that you don't want to lose. This is someone you look up to, somebody that you admire. And why does he raise the notch? Only because of familiarity. Because familiarity, you're close, you know each other for so long, it could lead to a zilzul, to you reducing the level of kavod. So therefore he says, raise it. So that should not happen. If you want that friendship, you want that relationship, then you have to keep it one notch higher than your student even, who you're going to respect for who he is. But this is not just a student. This is your friend. This is your partner. This is your marriage partner. I mean, hopefully the kavod will be there mutually, obviously, and it will be very, very much on a high level. Not just, we're pals. It's okay. My husband doesn't mind when I yell at him. He may not tell you because of his ego. He doesn't mind. But maybe he's hurt. You think a man will tell a woman he's hurt? Usually not. The woman tells the man she's hurt. You hurt my feelings. A man sometimes, I guess, could say that too, to a woman. No, you hurt my feelings. But that must be somebody who's very sensitive. Usually men don't like to share those kinds of feelings. They may yell back because of that. And they may get upset. But to say that they were hurt, So that may happen because of familiarity. We sometimes forget that, this is a serious relationship. It happens to me too. Sometimes I'm trying to be funny just because I'm usually not funny. So, because I'm serious, I want to, introduce a little bit of humor. And sometimes people take it the wrong way. I'm talking about in my house. They may not understand it right away. Usually they do, right? Because obviously it's not just the words you use, it's your demeanor. It's everything together. So they figure it out, it's a joke, or it's just funny. And the reason why this is done sometimes is purposeful, intentionally, and that is sometimes there's tension in the air. Kids are doing homework, kids are upset, or people are under stress. So I sometimes bring that in just to break the tension. Change the subject, make them laugh. So the person has to be in the mood to laugh, of course. If they're very, very angry, it may not be such a good idea. So you have to be careful. But the point is, you may take it too lightly and take the liberty to say things that perhaps shouldn't be said. And that is why he advises us, make sure it's kemorah rabach, that this would be your rabbi, your teacher. You wouldn't say that, right? You wouldn't talk like that. Umorah rabach kemorah shamayim. And here he raises at a level again. When it comes to your rabbi, when it comes to your master, when it comes to the one that you seek advice, that you want to learn something, you want to know what the halacha is, it should be kemorah shamayim. It should be like the reverence you have for shamayim. Why? The morah of rabach should be like morah shamayim. In some ways, yes, because otherwise you won't accept his authority. Otherwise you will say, what does he know? The halacha, I can also look it up myself. In other words, in order to maintain a certain degree of respect and to treat him as an authority where you could seek his advice, you're not going to seek his advice if you don't have that kavod for him. So in order for that kavod to endure, it has to be similar to the kavod of shamayim. Shamayim means that just the same way we accept Hashem's authority, right? Same way we accept the rulings of the rabbis. We accept what their teachings. We look up to it. Otherwise, chas v'shalom, what will happen is that if a lot of people have a lack of respect, then the chain of transmission of our tradition will be lost, will be broken. The reason why it has been preserved over 3,500 years is only because, Baruch Hashem, many people were sincere, were willing to self-sacrifice, were willing to give up everything for Torah. And for the teaching, for the transmission of Torah, for the education of their kids. In other words, they realized the importance of that. And they didn't just say, it's okay, I'll do without it. 1 hour a week, I'll teach him a little bit of Judaism. No. This is supreme. This is the Torah. This is the Masorah, our tradition. this better stick with him. Otherwise, Chas v'shalom, he'll become assimilated to the ways of the goyim. So it's dangerous. If a person loses kavod for the elders, what will happen when a Jew loses kavod for the elders? What will happen is what happened at the turn of the 20th century. Rabbis tell us that in the generation of Mashiach, achutzpah tizgeh. There will be an increase in insolence, impudence, chutzpah. Child does not have kavod for his father. A daughter is disrespectful of her mother-in-law, which was always the case anyway. Yeah. But I guess when Mashiach comes, it will increase. Yeah. So you can now begin to understand why all of a sudden some people have become not religious. You wonder, why should a child ever become not religious if his father was? So no, somebody broke away. Why did he break away? Only because he has a lack of respect for his father. Anybody that truly respects his father, he respects his father's tradition. So if he basically moves away from it, he has lost respect for his father too. I love my father. Yeah, he says, I love. No, you don't. You say so, but you don't follow his ways. Oh, that's because he's primitive. Well, that means you're disrespectful of him, of your grandfather. You think you know better. So you see how that's how it begins. People say, I can give this up. They didn't know any better. That's a lack of respect, no matter what justification you give to it. So that's why it's important to have the proper respect and to look up to the elders, the previous generation. They were closer to Sinai. They knew better. And they knew more. And obviously, if it is Kemorash Shamayim, then the chances are that I will consult with him, I will learn from him, I will want to be like him. Very important point. All right. Before we go on to the next Mishnah, I want to share with you something that you may never have heard of, that is related to this Mishnah. You go and seek advice. Should I move to Israel or not? Should I marry that girl? Should I begin this business? You want to seek advice, and you're not seeking advice from a doctor, because it's not a medical problem, right? You're seeking advice from a rabbi. Because this is something that is more Torah related, your question. And even if it's not completely Torah related, you trust him. How do you know what he tells you is the right advice? You know, even doctors make mistakes, and that's why for major operations, we consult with 3 opinions. Who's to tell you that this rabbi, that you want to ask his advice, which you plan to follow, you're not just out of curiosity, he's going to give you the right advice? Anybody want to suggest, how do we know this? Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe you're asking the wrong person. And by the way, if the one you're asking really does not know, he should tell you he doesn't know, depending on the nature of the question. But sometimes we seek the advice of somebody who's more experienced, who's older, who's more knowledgeable, because we feel that he may know better. But sometimes it's about a topic that he may not be so familiar with, and especially if it's a very, very sensitive topic. What's a sensitive topic? A guy is losing money in his business. He's losing. Like today, many people are losing money. Should he sell his business? I'm sure you've heard this kind of a question, no, Yaakov, these days? That people are considering in downtown, right? Should I sell the building or not sell the building? Should I move somewhere else? Or perhaps start a new business? What should I do? It's a good question, but it's a very delicate question because you don't want to give him bad advice. Sell. Oh, had he waited 2 more months, he would have made more money, you know. So that would turn out to be bad advice. Not sell. In the meantime, he's paying a mortgage and he's not making money, so he's losing money every month. So there are difficult questions. And we don't have Ruach HaKodesh. We don't have prophecy. Unless you go to a big tzaddik, and they do exist in every generation. How is somebody who's not the greatest tzaddik able to give the advice? So what's the answer? Yes?
He has to research. He can't give you a snap answer. He has to go.
That's a good answer. In other words, what you're saying is that some questions should require the one who's being asked to do some research, to investigate, to ask more questions. That would be actually the common sense thing to do. But what if it's one of those things that no matter how much research you do, it's very difficult? Like the one I told you, should he sell, not sell the building? You can't know certain things. Or what about move to Eretz Israel? What about marry that girl? How could anybody say with confidence, this is it, or do that, when it comes to vague questions, vague areas? The answer is like this. If the one you're asking a question of is God-fearing person, has no personal interests in this, right? No personal gain from this question. He's known to be a good man. God-fearing good man. When you ask him, mishamayim, they give him the answer that you need to hear. That's what the Kabbalah teaches, the Hasidut teaches. You go to a Rebbe, you go to a rabbi, but it has to be someone who obviously common sense. He's a common sense person. He's down to earth, common sense. He has no interest or gain in this particular question that you're going to present to him. He's a God-fearing good man. He's, in other words, solid and knowledgeable, of course, of Torah. If you ask him the question and so much of what you're going to do depends on what he's going to tell you, your life pretty much depends on this. Mishamayim, they're going to give him the words to tell you what you will have to hear. He on his own may not know what to say. On his own, how should he know? How should he know? Well, that's a big question. Should I marry this girl or not? I never met her. I never dated her. How should he know if she's good for you? Right? Obviously, he can begin to ask you questions and use common sense and say, listen, if there's chemistry and there's similar values and outlook and similar backgrounds, and you both feel mutual, go for it. And actually, that's a good answer. And that's the right answer after a number of dates. What else are you looking for? Right? If she has a Mercedes-Benz, right? Yeah. Is that still the favorite car in that community?
It's changing now.
Oh, it's changing, huh? Yeah. BMW, I think, no?
I guess so.
Yeah. Anyway, what else are you going to ask for? Is that it? And so, yes, go. Obviously, min hashamayim, Hashem, we see zivugim happening because Hashem puts people together. But some people hesitate. Some people need a push. And they are the ones that are going to ask. Most people don't have to ask because they're going to know one way or another. But some people need that push, and that's why they ask. So in certain areas of life, there's no doubt that if the rabbi is qualified and God-fearing and knowledgeable and good and he has no interest in this, the min hashamayim, they're going to tell him what to tell you. Now, don't get me wrong. If that individual who got the advice went ahead and did it and still something happened that was not so good, that was also min hashamayim. In other words, min hashamayim, that's what he needed to hear. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily the best thing for him to do. The majority of the times we hope that this man or woman, because they're sincere and because they're so trusting of Torah, trusting of rabbis, trusting of the advice that this individual who's good is going to give them, then the majority have no doubt that they're going to get the best advice possible. Yeah. So that's the right thing to do when you do have a big question, you have a dilemma and you don't know what to do. Depending on the nature of the question, of course, you sometimes want to consult with specialists. What do I do with this child? That's misbehaving. What do I do with this? If this marriage has a problem. Some are complicated, real complicated, and you need to speak to specialists perhaps that know how to deal with these kinds of issues. So even a rabbi who is Baruch Hashem a good rabbi, knowledgeable and God-fearing and everything, he has to know when not to deal with the question and when to send this individual to the specialist, because he can, especially if he doesn't know how to deal with it. But other than that, the consultation in such an individual that we trust and is God-fearing, the Zat Hashem will lead to the right answer, to the right direction. The kavod, the respect that one gives rabbis, is also important because if one does not give it, then his chances for doing teshuvah are diminished. The Rambam brings down that one of the 24 dvarim, one of the 24 things or characteristics or attitudes hame'akvim et teshuvah, that prevent a person from doing real teshuvah, will give him a hard time for the whole life, is hamevazer rabotav, one who makes fun of his rabbis and teachers. If he likes to make fun of the teachers, of the rabbis, how will he ever accept criticism? How will he ever do teshuvah? How will he repent and say, I'm sorry, I admitted I'm wrong? He will never do that because he makes fun of them. So therefore, Rambam says, he will be one of the ones who will have a hard time doing teshuvah because he has that attitude. Having that kind of a attitude from rabbis, his chances for doing teshuvah are much more diminished than the average individual who may feel bad and one day come back. That is what's important, to have the proper kavod for Torah, for the teachers of Torah, and so forth. All right, next one. Next Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda אומר, "Havezahir בתלמוד, ששגגת תלמוד עולה זדון." In some ways, this Mishnah is related to the previous Mishnah because we're talking about learning, we're talking about teaching, we're talking about Torah. Rabbi Yehuda stresses that in teaching, one has to be extremely careful to review the subject matter, the material that he's presenting. He doesn't want to, you don't want to make a mistake. Because a mistake in teaching, even though it's a mistake means unintentional, it is equivalent or tantamount to doing it intentionally. We know that somebody who committed a wrong unintentionally is treated one way. In other words, the Torah says, bring a korban chatat, bring such a sacrifice, and so forth. It's not the same as a mezid, as doing something intentional, which requires a higher form of teshuvah. But in teaching, be careful what you teach. You don't want the kids to go off. You don't want them to be misled. You don't want them to basically do something which is against halakha. You're going to be teaching, especially halakha. I mean, oy vavoy if they do the wrong thing. So be careful with Talmud sheshigegat Talmud ola zadon. It is equivalent to intentional, to doing it intentional. And this is not just with teaching, it's also with learning. Don't ever claim you didn't know. Have a zahir betamud, be careful with learning. You can say this is talking about learning too, because not having known something is your fault for not having learned. In other words, the fault or the mistake that comes out as a result of lack of learning, lack of review, is our mistake. It's negligence. It's worth. It's like you did it intentionally. One way to compare it to, one way to understand this is with the following mashal. Imagine somebody who had a problem with drinking. He gets drunk a lot. And when he gets drunk, he begins to break stuff. And he broke some very expensive china while he was intoxicated. Later on, he came out of it and says, I'm sorry, but whenever I get drunk, this could happen. I lose control, and I can begin to destroy stuff around the house. What are we going to tell him? What we're going to tell him is, okay, we excuse you for breaking the china because you lost control, but you are guilty of having gotten drunk. Because breaking something while you were drunk was done unintentionally. That's correct. But getting drunk, you did intentionally. Right? So you're going to be found guilty of getting drunk. Having made a mistake, mistakes happen. You didn't know. It's unintentional, of course. But you're guilty of not having learned. Had you learned, you would not have made the mistake. I wish people applied this to marriage as well. We all make mistakes. It's only human to make a mistake. We're sometimes not in a good mood. We're sometimes under pressure. We react not the way we want to react. That's all. We're not angels. But if a person learns, especially before he gets married, that these are the possibilities, this can happen, and he should be careful, then he's better off not to learn, not to go to a marriage counselor when there's a need for it, not to seek the advice of people how to handle a situation. The mistake will repeat itself. And what a shame when things repeat themselves. Why allow them to repeat themselves? Learn once and for all. So for that, there's no excuse. Learn. Yes.
There is mention that a teacher should be very careful about what he teaches his students, because if he makes a mistake and the student teaches the same lesson to someone else, the teacher initially is liable for the mistake that he made.
Yes.
So, with the student who teaches the wrong, there's a mistake. There's a mistake that's made somewhere along.
Yeah, and it could be perpetuated. You're saying, sure.
So,
Yeah.
would they all be held equally accountable? The mistake that was made by the first person, by the teacher.
Right.
And the student maybe didn't research it, he trusted the teacher.
Well, the first one who taught the mistake is going to be held accountable for all the future mistakes.
All of them.
All of them. But even the individuals themselves who are now teaching should at least do some homework, do some research to make sure that what they're doing, what they're saying is correct. Especially if it's a sensitive topic, it's halachot. Halachot we always have to review because we forget. We can't remember all the details by heart. Halakha, if you make a mistake, sometimes it's difficult to repair. The damage is done. So when it comes to halakha, you have to check your sources again. Are you sure that there's no machloket? Are you sure that it's mutar or it's asur? What about if it's extraneous situations? Can you be more lenient? So you need to find out. I know there was a story, let's see if I remember it correctly, of a woman that came to ask a rabbi, and the rabbi was the author of the Meshech Chochmah, a big rabbi, big Talmid Chacham. I think it was him. Anyway, about a chicken. Is it kosher or not? He looked it over. Some of the students were there to see what he's going to say. It was a real question. And he hesitated at first, and then he said, you know what, it's mutar. It's permissible. It's okay, you go ahead and eat it. Then, and it's true, it was mutar. Apparently based on all that he could see. As the wife, the woman, who was very happy to hear that, was walking out, she said, Baruch Hashem, even my husband thought so. So as she went out, about a half a minute later, he sent his student to call her. I changed my mind. I realized it's a sur. And he basically said the chicken is tarif. And she felt so bad, and what a shame. In those days, I guess one chicken meant a big loss. So anyway, she, I guess, whatever she did, she threw it in the garbage, she gave it to a goy. She went home. The students asked the rabbi, what did you just do? I mean, for all that we can tell, you said first it was mutar. Did you really change your mind? He says, no, I didn't change my mind. It's mutar. I intentionally, this is an incredible story, because if I wouldn't read it, I wouldn't believe it. The rabbi said, as soon as I heard her saying, my husband thought so too, I realized right away that she's married to someone who maybe learns a little bit or knows some things, and next time around, if she has any questions, she will not come ask the rabbi. She's going to trust what her husband says, and he's not a rabbi. So therefore, I decided at that moment to basically say it's tarif. In this way, she will not rely on what her husband says. You understood here the point? That's tremendous chokhmah here. It takes guts too. Of course, it takes everything here, but it makes some sense. The rabbi felt that this is the type of individual who will in the future possibly ask her husband, "Oh, you're so smart. Rabbi agreed with you." Not that. So he said, "No, it's tarif." Very interesting, and it's true. It could happen. Yeah. So you have to be careful when it comes to halakha, to review it. And every time you review something, by the way, every time you learn something that you've learned many years ago, you discover things that you never knew. And you may discover also that you've made a mistake in interpreting something in the past, all the time. Whether it's in Chumash, halakha, in any area of learning. It's important to review. We forget. Hashem intentionally makes us forget, so we should not stop to learn. If you would remember everything you ever learned, you wouldn't learn. We forget, so we should review, so we should continue to learn. So Rabbi Yehuda therefore warns us, be careful with making mistakes. When it comes to learning, those mistakes are very, very costly. So his emphasis here is on the responsibility of the teacher, on the one who teaches, to make sure that he's reviewed, that he knows exactly what he's saying. Rabbi Shimon Omer Shlosha Ktarim Hem Ketet Torah v'Chetet Kehuna v'Chetet Malchut. There are three crowns in Judaism. The crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. The crown of priesthood, belongs to Kohanim. The crown of Malchut belongs to Shevet Yehuda, right? What about the crown of Torah? Torah Tzivanu Moshe Morasha Keilat Yaakov. It belongs to all of us. It belongs to every single Jew. Come and grab it. Learn it. What is a crown? Why does he call these crowns? Crowns show something lofty, something that you put on top of a head, something that shows kavod, something that shows chashivut. In other words, all these three are very much held high in Judaism. We hold kehuna very highly. The Kohen Gadol, not only the Kohen Gadol, any Kohen, they get the truma, they're kadosh, holy. So we hold these in high regard. So we hold the priesthood in high regard. We hold Malchut, obviously the Melech, more than anybody else. That is human, that is. We hold them in high regard. In Keter Torah, of course, Talmid Chacham, there's even a Mishnah that says, Mamzer Talmid Chacham, Kodem leKohen Gadol HaMaaretz. A Mamzer is he's a child from a forbidden union. Right? Not illegitimate exactly, but he's you know what I mean by Mamzer? Rather not say it in English. Some people don't like it. So, if he just happens to be a Mamzer, but he's a Talmid Chacham, he gets more kavod than a Kohen Gadol HaMaaretz. Now you're going to ask me, how could you ever have a Kohen Gadol who's an HaMaaretz, who's an ignoramus? The answer is in Beit Sheni, during the Second Temple era, the Kohanim Gedolim were not necessarily appointed. They bought it. Give me this job. I'll pay for it. They were not qualified. Therefore, they didn't live long. They died within a year, many of them. So anyway, you could have a Kohen Gadol HaMaaretz. The Mamzer Talmid Chacham will come before him. But anyway, these three crowns are held in high regard. But the crown of Torah is a very significant crown because this crown belongs to every one of us. Everyone is capable of acquiring Torah. The famous story with Eliyahu Navi and a fisherman. Eliyahu Navi, of course, he did not reveal who he was, came to a fisherman. He saw a fisherman making a net. He has a conversation with him. How goes it? How's your parnasah? And everything's fine. Baruch Hashem, everything okay. How's your Torah? He says, what Torah? He says, don't you learn some Torah? So he says, Torah? I don't have the brains for it. I don't have a head for it. Hashem didn't give me a brains for it. So Eliyahu Navi tells him, let me ask you a question. What are you making right now? He says, a net. How do you make a net? He says, well, I plant the flax and I harvest it. And then I use it to make the nets, tie them in a certain way that I can use it to catch fish. So you mean God gave you the brains for that and not for Torah? So excuses. We know people have many, many excuses. Hashem gave us brains. We want to be sure to use it for the right things. Torah says, Lo b'shamayim hi. It's not so difficult. What's it difficult to learn basic stuff? Basic halachot is difficult. How to wash your hands. That's an easy halakha. Well, it depends if you're washing your hands for bread, if you're washing your hands in the morning when you get up, whether you do it in alternating, how many times do you do it? These are basic details. There are areas of halakha and of Torah that are more complex, of course. The Kabbalah is complex, right? Certain aspects of halakha are not easy, but there's other portions of Torah that are. They're accessible. So it's excuses. So the Keter Torah is accessible and can be worn by anyone who chooses to. Then there's one more crown, the Keter Shem Tov Ole Al Gabehen. There's one more crown. It's the crown of a good name, a good reputation. This one sits above all of the three. Why? A good name, we all know a good name is good. But why is this crown above all the other crowns? Now, remember, we said that crowns are important. So this one is more important than all of them. For first of all, this is the only crown that you take with you to Olam Haba. Even though Torah, obviously, you do take with you, right? But the one that makes a big difference is if you earned yourself a good name. As Shlomo HaMelech says, Tov Shem, Mishem and Tov. Because if you learn Torah and you didn't earn yourself a good name, then what did you accomplish? A good name, remember, also is between Adam lechavero, between man and his fellow Jew. It's not just between us and Hashem. So Keter Shem Tov, therefore, is more important than anything else. But when we say more important, what do we mean? We mean that even those three that are important, they on their own are not good, are not valuable, if they don't have Keter Shem Tov Al Gabehen. So Keter Shem Tov Al Gabehen can mean two things. Either Keter Shem Tov is really sitting on top of all of them, because it has more value. And it also means that those three that are important are not as important if they don't have Shem Tov with them. So somebody who's a Kohen and doesn't have a good name. Somebody who's a king doesn't have a good name. Somebody who has a lot of Torah but doesn't have a good name, then that crown that he has is worthless. So Keter Shem Tov Ole Al Gabehen means not only is it supreme, it also means it better be on top of all those three. Otherwise, those three, without it, do not add up to too much. Keter Shem Tov is not a fourth crown. Because it says, remember, it says Shlosha Ktarim Hem. Why didn't it say there's four? We just counted four. Torah, Kehuna, Malchut, and now it says Keter Shem Tov. No. Keter Shem Tov is not a fourth crown. The reason for that is because these three crowns exist. They exist. Torah exists, Kehuna exists, Malchut exists. Keter Shem Tov you make yourself. It doesn't exist. Follow? You earn it. You make it. You fashion it yourself. That is why it's not mentioned as one of the three. I thought that was a nice explanation. I saw that somewhere. You make it on your own. You fashion it. Yes?
A lot of the hidden tzaddikim, individuals were recluse. They were isolated. Some of them didn't associate with other people.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So how could they develop a good reputation? Because they never really associated, they kept on their own. They were by themselves. They never really associated with other people. So would they be losing out? Or
that's a very good question. The Maggid of Dubna, if you ever heard of him, once visited the Gaon of Vilna. You have to know a little bit of history, who these two were. They were very good friends. Gaon of Vilna was the leader of his generation, tremendous Chacham, Gaon. And the Maggid of Dubna, who lived in a different city, was a Maggid. A Maggid was a preacher, but he wasn't just a preacher. He was renowned for his parables, for all his meshalim, for his beautiful stories, and how he was able to explain even sometimes difficult concepts with ease by using all kinds of stories and parables. And of course, many of them were funny and humorous and nice and interesting, and this of course inspired a lot of people. So he was a very well-renowned Maggid of Dubna. So the children, the family of the Gaon of Vilna used to sometimes beg him to come to be with their dad, because our dad is a little serious, he is a little bit down. Not that he was depressed, chas v'shalom, but a person who's very, very serious sometimes needs uplifting, motivation. Even though he was so dedicated, devoted, still, you need something to uplift someone, to inspire him. So they used to beg him to come, because our dad loves you. So he used to come from time to time. So one time he came to the Gaon of Vilna, and the Gaon of Vilna tells him, "Can you please give me musar?" Imagine, the Gaon of Vilna asks this Maggid of Dubna to give him musar, like he needs musar. So the rabbi tells him, "You don't need musar. You want me to give you musar? Who am I to give you musar?" He says, "Nonetheless, I know you can give musar. Think of something that you can give me musar." Okay. So he says, Gaon of Vilna, you think it's a big deal what you're doing, sitting at home locked up behind closed doors and windows, to be a righteous Jew? You think that is a big accomplishment? Go out to the street and be exposed to what we are exposed, all the temptations and challenges, and then let's see you how righteous you're going to remain. You think it's a big accomplishment, right? What you do, that's nothing. Anybody can do that. What's the big, as he said in Yiddish, what's the big kunz? Kunz is ma chochma gdola zot. You're sitting in, that's basically related to your question. Go out to the street. Show them, that's chochma. Show that you're tzaddik, even though you saw all the filth, even though you had all the temptations and challenges. Then, if you're a tzaddik, that's a tzaddik. But behind closed doors, to be a tzaddik, that's not a big deal. Anybody could do that. So the Gaon of Vilna says, thank you very much, but I don't want to show any chokhmot. I don't want to show a big deal and go out. I'd rather, live my simple life and not be exposed to all the challenges and not achieve such a big accomplishment like you claim I will if I did go out. Because it's true. Whoever does live in difficult circumstances grows up in an environment which is very challenging and still remains righteous. Obviously, his reward is greater than the one who's spoon-fed, who's sheltered. Obviously, he doesn't have those challenges. So in answer to your question, yes, that's what Pirkei Avot says many times. We'll see it. According to your effort will be the reward. According to what you went through. Two Jews fulfilling the same mitzvah. One worked harder, one went farther to shul than the other one. The other one will be, the one who worked harder will be rewarded. Nonetheless, in answer to your specific questions of these tzaddikim, they don't need to go through this. Hashem sent them down, some of them, especially the 36 ones, just to be here for the generation to protect us. Their mission in life is not to be exposed. On the contrary, that would interfere with their life. That would interfere with the Avodat Hashem. That would interfere with their mission. So Hashem therefore puts them away in the forest. In a place where there's more seclusion. But in general, you're right. In general, the more a person is exposed, the greater the reward will be. However, don't take a chance. Don't always say, okay, I'm going to expose myself, I'm going to go to all these places and hold myself back. The rabbis say it's not the right thing to do. There were two rabbis who were going home. They say, okay, we can go right and we can go left. What's the difference? If we go right, there is a very, let's see, how should I translate? I want to choose my words here. I don't want to use exact words. There's a place that is not very modest on the way. Okay? Think of it as a movie theater. I don't want to use the real name for it, but you know what I mean. Something like that. On the way, there's something like that, and if we go by it, they're going to come out and try to make of us customers. And here on the left, there is a house of Avodah Zarah. Which one should we choose? Well, what's the question? Well, the question is like this. If we go through this spot that has all kinds of temptations, and we hold ourselves back and resist, we're going to be rewarded immensely. Here, we are no longer in an era that there is Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. Right? After they came back to rebuild the second temple, the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, the inclination, was gone. Today, there's no Yetzer Hara for all these temples in Asia, right? For all these things. Who cares about them? So there's no attraction. So if we go here, we won't get all the reward, but it will be easier for us because we won't be challenged. Maybe we should just go here. So they said, no, let's go here. Let's be challenged and get the reward. And they did it. And they were very challenged. And when they finally arrived in their yeshiva, and they were so proud of themselves, the rabbis basically told them, you did the wrong thing. You don't put yourself in that kind of a situation. Don't take a risk, a change. I'm going to resist. I'm going to see everything, expose myself, and say no. No, don't ever take that chance. So yes, the answer is you are rewarded, but don't put yourself in that situation. In the end, we have to remember that Tov Shem Tov, a good name is worth more than anything else because that is a true accomplishment. Why is that a true accomplishment? First of all, when it comes to Torah, as opposed to Kehuna and Malchut, which are inherited, if your father was a Kohen, you're a Kohen. If you were from Shevet Yehuda, you know, Shevet Yehuda. Even though Torah is an accomplishment too, Torah, nonetheless, some people, it comes to easier than to others. They're geniuses, you know, they have a good memory. A Shem Tov, however, is not easy to acquire, requires more effort, so it's therefore a bigger accomplishment. Nonetheless, the learning of Torah is also a very big accomplishment. Why is learning of Torah a big accomplishment? Because the rabbis tell us that Hashem intentionally did not make it that the children of big rabbis should be rabbis. Who will be the chachamim of the generation? The children of the poor. The children whose parents were simple and poor. They must have been God-fearing parents too, obviously, to bring down such a neshama soul. Why make it that their children should be the great rabbis? Because Hashem does not want people to think that Torah ba keyerusha chozeret. In other words, it comes, oh, the father was a rabbi, I'm going to be a rabbi. Not necessarily. On the contrary, be careful with the poor. When you're accepting them into school, don't overcharge them, don't make it difficult for them, don't be too demanding of them. Ki mehem tetzeh Torah. The Torah will come out from the poor, from the simple people. Yeah, Hashem does not want you to think that Torah is automatic. If your father was a rabbi, you're going to be a rabbi. Now, obviously, it's important that there's Torah in every family because eventually the children, the grandchildren will learn to appreciate, to value it properly. But Hashem wants Torah to be something that we work on it on our own, something that's not inherited. So if somebody does work on it on his own, obviously it's still a big accomplishment. But a Shem Tov is much more difficult. You have to be careful. You really have to earn it. It's not a talent. You have to be a good man. You have to be kind to people. You can't be selfish. And that's why it's a bigger accomplishment. Yeah.
Isn't the same true with Mashiach, that he comes from a very basic and simple? He's going to come from parents that are the Mashiach.
No, I never saw that. No.
They say that he comes. You mentioned it, that he comes from very simple parents. He doesn't come from very renowned or.
No, not necessarily. I didn't say it. You must have heard it somewhere else. What I said perhaps is that it could be anyone in any family, but it has to be from Shevet David. It has to be a God-fearing person whose neshama is basically connected to Mashiach. It just can't be a simple person from the street.
No, that his parents are simple.
No, there's nothing. No, it has nothing to do with parents. Mashiach's birth is not, in any way that I can recall, connected to certain parents. It could be that the parents are simple. It could be that the parents are learned. It could be that they're virtuous in some other way. But it's that kind of chesed. I've never seen anybody talk about the parents of Mashiach. I don't think it's even discussed anywhere. Because he can come from anyone. You know, but the people who actually will give birth to him will obviously be worthy of it. And they can be simple people. But no, it doesn't really, there's no reference to it as to who they will be, what kind of people they will be. It could be anybody. All right, so before we go on to the last Mishnah, just want to tell you a little story of what a good name is. In a sense, it has to do with kindness much more than with a good name, but it's pretty much in the same alley. There was once a woman, I think she came to the Chafetz Chaim. She came to a big rabbi and she complained. What was her complaint? Rabbi, you know, my husband is such a kind person. He helps out people so much. People come and beg him, he can't say no. He really helps everyone. And because of that, Rabbi, my husband suffers so much from people who come and knock and call and come and ask. And, you know, he's so good and he's just, they make his life difficult. You know, he's suffering from all these people. What should I do? So the Chafetz Chaim tells the woman, listen, when we head upstairs, there will be some people who the Malachim will point to them and say, you see this guy? The entire community suffered because of him. So many people suffered because of him. And there will be others that they will say, you see him? He suffered from so many people. It's better for your husband to suffer from other people than for upstairs to say that they suffered because of him. Right? Which one is better? So let them say that he suffered from the entire community rather than he made everyone else suffer. Reputation. You know, this man did so much for others. He cared for so much for the people. That as a result of that, his life was difficult. You know, they made it difficult for him. But that's a much better reputation, no comparison, to somebody else, exact opposite, who because of his actions, because of his conduct, you know, so many people really suffered from him. You know, the two exist. So it's better to be from the ones who suffer from people instead. All right, last Mishnah. רבי נהוראי אומר, הביא גולה למקום תורה, ואל תאמר שהיא תבוא אחריך, שחבריך יקמוה בידיך ובינתך לתשען. So let's translate and then we'll explain. Rabbi Nehorai, there were various rabbis who were called Rabbi Nehorai. Nehorai means or, means light. And some say that this is Rabbi Meir. And he says like this, הביא גולה למקום תורה. What's gole? Gole means to move. Sometimes we move because we have no choice. You know, we got to move. Somebody lost his job, he has to move. Somebody got married, he has to move. You move for all kinds of reasons. In the past, the Jewish people had to move all the time. They were thrown out. Rabbi Nehorai, in giving us direction as to where to move, says, make sure you move to a Makom Torah. This is a very, very powerful message for the following reason. Myself personally, I can tell you, I like it around Yosemite National Park. There's no traffic. There's no smog. Fresh air. Quiet. And I'm sure it's cheaper there too than here. What's wrong? Beautiful life. You can have a beautiful life there, believe me. It's really, really nice to live with nature. Imagine. People from all over the world come to visit there. So why not live there a whole year? The answer is very simple. This Mishnah. A Jew is limited to where he can live. Not where he can go on vacation. Even though vacation too is limited, you can't just go anywhere. Some places are off limits because of tzniut. But when it comes to living, building a home, taking up residence, only Makom Torah. Because a Jew needs a mizgeret. He needs surroundings that include shul, minyan, mikveh for the wife, school for the children, kosher food. You can't do without these. Therefore, a Jew is limited to choice. You want to go to Boise, Idaho? Yeah, maybe nice. Not a good idea. Maybe they have a Chabad. I don't know. I have to look it up. Yeah, but that's not a place because that's not a Makom Torah. You can't raise your children there. How about North Dakota? They're looking for people. You know, you can't. Even though you're going to find a job easily. By the way, there's no unemployment there. They found a lot of oil there. Yeah, but life is not only about making money. It's not only about a job. A Jew needs an infrastructure that is of Torah. That's it. Yes.
You made mention before about the sparks of Kedusha, about how they're dispersed. Sometimes could somebody be sent to a place to gather those sparks to come back? Sometimes a person doesn't know why they're being sent to a corner of the
on a temporary basis, yes, but not to take his whole family there.
But the person wouldn't know why they're going there.
No, he may not know, right. Here we're talking about to go into Galut, you want to choose a Makom Torah. And he says, Al tomar sheitavo acharecha. Okay, I'm going to go to Yakutsk in Russia, or whatever, you know, to a place, someplace, right? I'm going to go to Bandar Abbas. Right? Right? That sounds more familiar, right? And you know why? Because, you can work for the petroleum company there. So, and what are you going to say? But there's no Torah. It's okay. Hi tavo acharecha. They're all going to come join me. They're going to come from Shiraz. They're going to come from Isfahan too. They're all going to come join me, right? Oh, they're going to go straight to America. Anyway, don't ever say they're going to come later to join you. Yeah, we'll make a community. You see, I'll bring a Sefer Torah. You're the first one there. No. Don't ever say that. There was one rabbi who said that, a big rabbi, Rabbi Azar ben Arach. I think it was after the death of his teacher, Rabbi Yochanan, who was in the yeshiva of Yavne, Chachamea, in that area of Eretz Israel. And somehow, I think it could be because of his wife. He went to his wife's birthplace, which was a nice city. They had bathhouses there, tranquil way of life. And eventually, the Gemara says he forgot all his learning because of that. He was one of the wisest Talmidei Chachamim. Obviously, it was Min HaShamayim. Until the rabbis prayed for him, and all his learning came back. But he was forgetting by himself, without Torah. Oh, they're going to come. Al tomar shitavo acharecha. They're going to come join me too here. They're going to see how good it is. They're never going to come. Don't ever say that. Unless a whole community got together as one group, minyan, then it's possible. But to depend on that, don't ever have that kind of an attitude. It may never happen. It's a risk. Or, don't ever say, okay, you need to learn with someone. You need a learning partner. My chavarim, they're going to come visit me. And we're going to have exchanges of Torah. No, that's not sufficient. You need to have a rabbi. You need to ask questions. You need to have shiurim. You need to have exchange of ideas. You can't learn by yourself everything, right? So don't say, that as a result of the relationship with your friends, yekaimua. In other words, they're going to make that Torah stay with you. No way. But don't rely on your understanding. All right, so before we get to the last statement, which is a separate statement of what Rabbi Nahora is telling us, amongst other things, is not only to choose a place of Torah. He's using the words goleh. Goleh means that when you're going to a place of Torah, you have to be prepared to go into galut, even if it means depriving yourself of certain luxuries. We're lucky here. Baruch Hashem, we have nice weather. Housing is nice. A lot of things are good here. There's a lot of benefits and advantages in Southern California. But to buy a house, it's expensive these days. To own your own house, if you start now, it's very difficult. Even rent is high. Tuition is high. And you may be tempted as a result of that, despite all the benefits here, is maybe to move somewhere else. There's a lot of cheaper places to move. Just be careful, you choose a place of Torah. Now, let's say you find a new place of Torah, and you come there and you say, wow, the weather is no good. Snowy, cold, humid in the summer, bees, Yeah, I'm talking about Baltimore. They have bees in the sukkah. You're in the sukkah, you get bees. In the winter, you get snow, humidity, everything. So why would you want to live there? Because there's a yeshiva. It's a makom Torah. Housing is cheaper. You sometimes have to forego. You sometimes have no choice. You have to say, okay, I can't. Listen, if I want to have a house, right? You can have it, by the way, for much less money a house there than here. And even in New York, in certain parts of New York, that is, it's cheaper. Property tax is very high, but and tuition is still high, but housing may be cheaper. So sometimes you just have to forego. Say, okay, what can I do? The gashmiut, the materialism, the comforts are less, but it's a makom Torah. So he says goleh. Goleh is also talking about boys going to yeshiva. It's always best to leave one's home. At least it used to be in the past. Not every city had yeshivot. But even if the city has a yeshiva, sometimes the moving away, goleh le-makom Torah, is good to go away from home, because being close to home is too close to comfort. Too many things will bother you, interfere with you, will distract you. Rav Chaim Volozhin, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, made the first yeshiva in Chutz La'aretz in the past at least few hundred years. We had yeshivot in Bavel, in Babylonia, but in the recent history, especially the yeshiva as it's known today, with dormitories and the like, he made it, he established it. And where did he choose a place to make it? Volozhin. Volozhin was a very small town, more like a village, away from the big cities. He wanted them to concentrate on Torah. So the conference were missing. No railroad, no electricity. In those days, for sure, no electricity, right? The amenities were lacking, but they would be able to concentrate more on the learning over there. Therefore, havigoleh lemakon Torah, go to galut, but at least you'll be able to focus and succeed in your learning. So you don't have all the amenities, so what? Important, however, that one be in a Makom Torah also because he needs to have a rabbi. He needs to have somebody to consult. A woman sometimes has a question about Taharat HaMishpacha. Family purity laws sometimes are complex. You know, you need to ask somebody who's experienced in this area, not just anybody. So if you're around the area where there's no mikveh, what are you going to do? I mean, some places they have to go miles and miles and miles to dip in a mikveh. And if it was frozen, they had to break the ice in Russia. Yeah, our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, that's what they used to do. Because they knew that without mikveh, there's no continuity. In Matsada, they found mikveh. That's one of the first things you find. A new Jewish community, the first thing you build is a mikveh before a shul. Why? A shul you can have in your living room. To begin with. You don't need to have a building for a shul. But without a mikveh, you don't have a continuity of the Jewish people. So these are priorities. You can't live without them. Kosher food today, I guess you can ship kosher food. If you're stuck in Singapore, there's a Chabad there, there's kosher food brought from various places. Even in other places, in the United States, today many supermarkets carry kosher food. It's not as a problem as it used to be, but still, if you don't have Jews around you, no minyan, I mean, the identity will be eventually, chas v'shalom, weakened. So these are things we can't give up. And the last statement, very, very significant statement, v'binatchal tisha'en, don't rely on your own understanding. Don't rely on your own understanding, is even though you're very learned, you learned a lot, whether you're by yourself or whether you're in any place, don't rely on your own understanding. There's a saying in Yiddish, Fragen sollst du fragen alle Menschen, sollst du mit dein Kopf. What that means is to ask everyone for their advice, everyone who's knowledgeable, that is, and then do what your head tells you to do. At least you're smarter now that you heard all the advice from the people. You don't lose anything by asking. Seek the advice of people. Don't rely on your own understanding, because you may not be right. Who says you're right? You want to be right? You want to be more sure? Al binatchal tisha'en. Don't rely on your understanding. Ask. Yeah, obviously, so you must have rabbis. You have to know who to ask. Don't rely on your own. Adam karov le'atzmo, the Rabbi tells us, a man is sometimes biased. Therefore, en Adam ro'eh et mumav. He doesn't see his defects. He doesn't see his blemishes. Right? All the problems that he has. He needs others to tell him. You cannot rely on your own understanding. Your shiput, your judgment may not be so good. So you have to ask others. This last statement is significant for another reason. Not only are human beings not always capable of seeing things right, when it comes to interpreting what the Torah says or what the significance of a mitzvah is, we need to rely on the commentaries. We need to rely on the Chachamim before us, because they knew better. They had Ruach HaKodesh. And we cannot say, I know better. That's one of the major problems of the conservatives and Reform, that they don't have that respect for the previous generations. They don't see the divinity of the Torah. They don't accept that the Torah is divine. They're completely out of touch with what the Torah is. And they say, well, scientists today have come up with a reason and explanation of why it is a good idea to separate dairy from meat. Who ever told you that that's the reason the Torah had in mind? Even though scientists can be right about certain things, what they propose is not the definitive explanation of it. It may be an additional idea. The moment that we attribute too much importance to their interpretation, to their explanations, to their ideas, we lose our connection to Torah Misinai. So therefore, be careful not to accept a human interpretation for a mitzvah, especially if it's a mitzvah that is a chok, It's a decree, like kashrut. It's not a common sense decree, a mitzvah like honor your parents. Oh, that makes sense. Don't steal, don't kill. Shatnez, right? Kashrut, and even Shabbat. These are chukim, decrees. Don't rely on your own understanding that this is definitely the right answer, the right explanation for it. Not necessarily. What we have from the Chachamim is more definitive, is more authoritative than what anybody else can say. So even though we, of course, look to science as Baruch Hashem, very nice, Hashem has given them the sechel, some sechel, to understand and to discover and to reveal and to explain, but that's not necessarily accurate when it comes to the Torah. The Torah is min hashamayim. It may be beyond their understanding. So, el binatcha, no matter how smart a person is, should not rely on his own understanding. Especially when it comes to Torah, you need something called siyata dishmaya. Siyata dishmaya is one of the things everybody forgets sometimes. What's siyata dishmaya? It means divine assistance. We have a complex idea that we want to understand, and we try to ask, we try to investigate, look into it, we spend time to figure it out. And some people may be able to understand it a little bit better than others, some have more clarity than others. Ultimately, what will it take to figure out, to resolve this problem, or to understand this issue properly? Siyata dishmaya, divine assistance. One example is aguna. Aguna is a woman, typically, whose husband ran away, disappeared. We don't know if he's dead or not. She cannot get married until we know for sure he died. But he hasn't been around for 20 years. No, maybe he just doesn't want to come home. But we saw him fall off the boat into the water. So maybe he swam up the coast. It's not enough. Unless you see clearly that he's dead. There's all kinds of signs, witnesses and so forth. This is a very complex halachic area for many rabbis, especially after the Holocaust. This happened, quite a few, they had to resolve. What happens if they made a mistake and the husband is still alive, he should be married, the children are mamzerim. That's why it's a very delicate question. You can't just tell the woman, okay, go ahead and get married. Listen, he's gone. If she's still married, he's alive, the children that she will have now are mamzerim. Complex area of halacha. Rabbis would need tremendous siyata dishmaya, tremendous divine assistance to make a correct ruling. That they should not make a mistake, chas v'shalom, with this woman. You know what responsibility is? So you need siyata dishmaya. Siyata dishmaya is the key. If somebody wants to succeed in understanding, in acting, in doing certain things in life, don't rely on your own understanding, no matter how smart you are, how much experience you have, and experience is good too. Ask Hashem for help. So Be'ezrat Hashem, the combination of learning Torah and tefillah, asking for Kadosh Baruch Hu to help us out, Be'ezrat Hashem will for sure make it easier for us to make the right decisions in life. Thank you.
Amen.